The first thing we are going to do is we're going to do the poached salmon with Bistro Salad. So the first thing is I'm going to prepare the candied almonds. So for the candied almonds, we are going to use half an egg white. I know the recipe says half an egg white, so you literally just kind of do it till you get about half of it in there. And we're going to put a pinch of salt. It's really important when you do candied almonds or any candied nuts, because you can really do any kind of nuts like this, walnuts, pecans. It's really important to use egg whites, and what that allows, it allows the flavoring to adhere to the nuts. Lots of recipes call for just oil and Cajun spice, but really you don't maximize the flavor adhering to the different nuts. So it's really important to use egg whites. So what I want to do is basically whisk this until it's nice and frothy. And you want to put the salt in with the egg whites and froth that first. It just helps the frothing method of the egg whites. Everybody can see in the mirror all right? You don't really need to pull an electric mixer out for this. It's pretty, and you basically just want to do it until you really see no more liquid underneath the foam. And then that's basically it. So to that, we are going to add our almonds. And we're going to give that a toss. And then we're going to add our seasonings. So we have cinnamon, cayenne, garlic powder, a little bit of smoked paprika, and sugar. We're just going to mix this up ahead of time, just so we don't have, if you add it all to the bowl separately, I would worry that you would have too much garlic on, some and not enough on another. So give it a good mix, and then add it to the almonds. And that's it. We're going to place that on our baking sheet. And then we're just going to bake them in the oven. So I have the oven 350 for about 12 minutes. 12 to 16 minutes depending on your stove. Do you have a timer? So we don't burn them. I did bring pre-made ones, but just didn't want to cheat you guys on showing you how to make them.
12 minutes?
Yeah, perfect. So now what we're going to do is we are going to prepare the salad and the salmon. So for today's salmon, we're using spring. The reason why I chose spring, there's really three species of salmon. Spring, sockeye, coho are the main three. You can also get silver brights, also known as chum, and you can also get pinks. I like using, spring is probably one of my favorite salmons. The reason is because it has the highest fat content. So sockeye is got the next highest fat content, and same with coho. So spring has really got the nicest fat content, so it's great for searing and it's great for poaching. I worry sometimes when I use like coho or sockeye, when you poach it, that it dries out a bit. So the spring has so much fat that it just stays really nice and moist. So that's why I'm using spring today. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to get the vinaigrette ready and the salad ready, and then we'll just poach the salmon afterwards. Now you can make the vinaigrette ahead of time, and I recommend making it several days in advance. So we're going to put our Dijon mustard in there. And we're going to put our honey in there. Do you want to hold the bowl for me? Everybody's following the recipe? Did I add that right? A little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. And we gotta add our lemon juice. This recipe is really great also. This is really a versatile vinaigrette recipe. I use this on spinach salads. Generally a lighter lettuce, like a mesclun greens or a spinach, this works the best for. And then we're going to slowly add our vegetable oil. Oops, do you want to hold this for me? Now what you want to do is you want to make sure when you make a vinaigrette, is you want to make sure that you add your vegetable oil or olive oil in a slow, steady stream. If you add it all at once, it'll separate on you. So just lightly. Once you get a certain amount in there, then you're pretty safe to add it a little bit quicker. And what it'll do is it emulsifies and it actually it becomes thick. Not too thick like a mayonnaise, then you've added way too much oil. Perfect. Thank you. Just test it and make sure it's good. Perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get the poached water completed for the salmon. So with this, we're going to add some ginger, some white wine, and some green onions. Remember, you're cooking, when you're poaching, you're actually trying to add some flavor to your product. So if you're cooking just plain water, it's not going to add anything to it. So if you add a little bit of chili flakes, a little bit of sugar. I don't like to add really any salt when I'm poaching. A little bit of acid, so either with a vinegar or even a little bit of, with a little bit of wine or even a little bit of vinegar. A couple nice slices of ginger in there. And then some green onions. I believe the recipe says bruise, so really I just use the back of my knife just to kind of give it a little bruise and then put them in there. Did I forget anything? Perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add our salmon. Now you want to make sure you have a pan that's big enough to hold it all with not like laying it on top of one another. And I think you noticed when I put my first piece of salmon in, the water didn't come over it, but as I've added salmon, it's kind of come up a bit. So also when you poach salmon, you want to make sure that you don't boil it rapidly. People have this idea that because it's in water, that it won't dry out, when in fact it really will dry out. So just keep it really on a light simmer. Make sure it's all, if you have to flip it partway through, you can, but I would rather try to not. And that's that. We're going to turn the heat up a bit. You can always turn it down if it starts to boil rapidly, and then just drop it down. So now we're going to prepare the coleslaw. Again, you can use any other lettuces that you'd like to put in this. This is great with spinach or any of the tender greens. I wouldn't use it like an iceberg or a romaine. Romaine wouldn't be bad if it was like a fine shred. So I try to keep the lettuces a little bit more on the tender size. And we have my radicchio. There it is. Yeah, please. So what I'm using here is I'm using a Belgian Endive, I'm using radicchio, and I'm using fennel. So what I'm going to do is for the endive, literally cut it in half, and you'll see there's a core in there. Just kind of notch out that core. And then give it, any of the outside leaves that are kind of brown and discolored, remove them, and then just give it a nice fine julienne. Now, you can make this ahead of time. I would pre-do it no more than a few hours ahead of time. Keep a damp towel over it. Belgian Endive actually does not like light. It gets a little bit more bitter, so keep a towel over it where there's not a lot of light hitting it. And if you find that it's kind of hard to julienne, separate the leaves out and do them in kind of batches. You'll find that it lays a little bit flatter that way. There we go. I've pre-done a little bit of endive there. And then the fennel. Now, same thing with the fennel, you have a core in there, but I don't remove the core, and the reason is if you remove the core, you're gonna try to julienne all these little tiny odd pieces. So what I like to use for this is called the mandolin. So this is, it's basically just a really inexpensive mandolin. You can buy really expensive mandolins. I honestly recommend buying these ones. They're great, you replace them every couple years. And literally, I'm just going to run it over the mandolin around the core. You can't run the endive through this because it'll really bust apart on you. And just keep working it around until you basically just have the core left. The only thing I wouldn't, if you pre-do this, is keep all the lettuces separate so the radicchio doesn't bleed into it. And don't go too close, so you don't take your fingers. It is really sharp. All right, so we're going to add our fennel to that, into there, and then our radicchio. So with the radicchio, you want to remove the core. You want to remove any excess leaves on the outside that are kind of discolored or brown. This one looks really good. When you're buying radicchio, it should be like somewhat soft, but not mushy soft, and it should have a nice bright red color on the outside of it. And then with this, we're just going to do a really fine chiffonade. Again, I really recommend doing it by hand. If you do it through your food processor, really the first day you buy your food processor, the blade is sharp enough to do this. After that, it's pretty much not, and you'll end up bruising it all. Just keep an eye on our salmon here. Actually, I'm just going to quickly check this. We're almost there. And there's our salad. Now the nice thing about this is endive has kind of a bitter flavor to it, but the honey lemon, even though the lemon is bitter, the honey lemon vinaigrette really works well with it. So there's our almonds. They're not quite ready yet. And as it cooks, it kind of gets almost like a brittle appearance to it, and that's what you want. The egg whites kind of hold it all together. I'm just going to turn this. One of these is a little bit thicker than the others. And I really want to cook the salmon no more than medium. And I think we're there. I'm going to lay the plates out. And just going to put a little bit of this to the side. So what we're going to do is we're going to dress the salad. Now you can't dress this too early, otherwise it'll get really soggy. That's one thing about the finer lettuces like this, they really will sog on you. Whereas like a coleslaw that's cabbage, and like if you do it ahead of time, it almost takes on like a pickle kind of texture. This you don't really want that pickly texture. Could I get you to divide that up for me on the plates? you have another pair of tongs?
Yeah, I got some downstairs.
Okay. So now what we're going to do is we will remove the salmon.
Center it.
Yeah. Just going to kind of remove it and then let it. I'm going to try to break a piece open for you to see. So I don't know if you can see in the mirror, but there's still a little bit of translucent inside the salmon, and that's kind of what you're looking for. The nice thing about using the spring salmon, though, is if it does overcook a bit, there's enough oil that will carry it, whereas a sockeye or any other fish really will be a little dry texture. I see my timer won't stop. So the magic of TV, I brought pre-made almonds. Pre-make them, leave them in your cupboard, closed, double the recipe, triple the recipe, because you'll eat them as snacks, so I pretty much guarantee you that. And then Mary, I'll let you go along and just put some almonds on each one. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to crumble a little bit of goat cheese on each one. Like so. You want to try to work a little bit quickly to get your salmon out of the water, because as it keeps sitting, it's going to keep cooking. I wouldn't put it on an absorbent towel, mostly because it might stick on you. So, thicker. There we go. I left the skin on it. I wouldn't eat the skin on poached salmon, but definitely on a pan-seared salmon. The reason why I leave it on is if you take the skin off, you'll end up with nuggets in your pan. It'll just all break apart on you. The skin really keeps it together for you. Oh, sorry, I thought you were behind me. Yeah, what I want to do is just put a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, just a tad bit on the salmon, just for a little flavor of the vinaigrette. Just make sure we have enough to go around. Can you pass me that plate? That's a little too far to reach. Perfect, a little bit on that one. Now the goat cheese I used for this is actually an Okanagan goat cheese. I actually buy it from Save-On and Safeway. The reason why I use this one is it's actually got a really mild flavor. Like some goat cheeses are, if you're a real cheese lover, by all means, buy some higher end ones that smell like goat. You know, there's goat cheese that you actually unwrap and it will make your whole house smell like goat. I use this one because, again, I just find it really mild flavor and it just goes nicely. If you get too overpowering of a cheese, it might overpower the dish a bit. Also with this dish, I've done this with seared scallops. I've done this just as the side salad. By all means, you don't need to use the salmon. It makes a fantastic side dish, the salad alone. I've even done it with chicken. I've taken chicken, marinated it in like a honey and a Dijon and a little bit of tarragon, and actually skewered it and put it on top of the salad. And if you also want, as a trick, is if you take the goat cheese and you can form it into little pucks. And then I've taken the almonds and pureed them in the food processor and crusted the goat cheese and put that on top. So, there's lots of different ways of doing it, but that's when I was at a restaurant quite a few years ago, that's how we used to do it. We used to do it with chicken, and then we used to make these little goat cheese cakes.